Greetings, students. I am on 35 northbound, just outside of Austin, Texas. It is a long story, but I returned there to pick up some of my belongings. That's why I have an olive tree and a bunch of other stuff here in my vehicle. I'm telling you this because my wife and our baby son are staying down there for a while to visit her family, and so this week I'm going to have plenty of time on my hands outside of class for open lab time to meet with students, study, prepare, quiz, clarify, etc. and so forth. Preparation for our exam number 4 coming up a week from tomorrow, a week from Tuesday. I wanted to throw out a couple of ideas, tips, strategies for studying that are nothing groundbreaking, nothing original, but just some things that I've been thinking about and have uncovered as I've thought about you guys as a group and talked with some of you. So I've come up with maybe a couple of ideas that'll perhaps spark something that'll help you. If it is helpful, grab it. If it's not, leave it. But I'm gonna keep this video to under 10 minutes so that I can give you guys some thoughts and tips on how to study and stuff like that. So the first thing is about the lab exam. Just to get this out of the way, the lab exam is not easy, but it's straightforward. You guys already have the list of things that I could potentially point out on models. It's a shorter list than last unit's, but the structures are, they have unusual names, and the central nervous system is complicated, and it's challenging, and so is it easier? It's like, in some ways it's easier, in some ways it's not. Although by and by I think probably it's easier than the last 2 units. You guys should all make sure that you have photographs of the models in the lab and any keys that go along with them. You should find somebody to quiz you. You should put yourself in situations where you are forced to produce this information without clues, without labels, without any outside help except what is in your heart, soul, and mind. You should do it frequently, daily, not for 4 or 5 hours a day, but for 30, 60, 120 minutes a day. You should study for this class. This is nothing new. It's nothing you've never heard before, or thought of before. I'm just telling you. I'm teaching someone to play the guitar right now, and after a few minutes, they said, "Boy, my fingertips really hurt for pushing down the strings." And I said, "Yes, that'll get better. That'll go away." But it helps you remember why guitar teachers and anatomy teachers tell you not to study for 6 hours 1 day a week, but for shorter chunks of time daily. If you play the guitar for 6 hours once a day, it would be very painful, and then by the time you sat down to do it again a week from, that callus wouldn't have had a chance to build up, and it would just hurt again, and it wouldn't be productive. Not really. You study for this class a little bit every day. That is the most effective and efficient way to do it successfully and to promote long-term memory, retention, mastery of material. That's how you study. That's my opinion, and that's what the learning science tells us. So that's the lab exam. Straightforward. Lecture exam is more challenging, I think. It's a little bit more difficult to predict what the questions will be like, although you guys have a study guide And I just want to remind you, something I hope you have heard me say many times this semester, is that the study guide is there for you as a guide and as a guiding North Star as to where to put your time and energy when you're studying for this exam. A lot of information in the slides and in the textbook. That's great information, and it's beautiful. Anatomy is awesome, and it's fun to learn about and study, but there's a lot of stuff in there that will not be on our exam number 4. And so the way to study is not to pore over the slides and memorize them, or attempt to memorize them, or to read the textbook chapters front to back. That is not how you study. The way you study is to take this objective list that I've posted and ask yourself if you can explain and teach these topics to somebody in a few minutes. 1 to 5 minutes. Can you boil it down and describe the 4 types of microglia and each of their roles? And can you identify the 3 or 4 important details about each of the spinal tracts? Teach it, explain it, and break it down and summarize it. Can you take any of the related diagrams from the textbook, any of the relevant diagrams to these checklist points, and recreate them yourself, or explain them, or teach them, or really can you understand and use those things as a tool to teach them to somebody else or to yourself? That's how you do it. That's to me the efficient way to study for this stuff right now. There's a point on there that you do not understand, email me about it, and read that section of the textbook. That's the way to do it. The other thing that I've mentioned, I think, a couple times sort of in passing, but haven't really gone into a lot of detail about, has to do with making your own test questions. I've asked you guys to make 5 questions essentially for each body system. 5 questions about the central nervous system material that we're covering is like a very tiny piece of the pie. One thing that you might try is, for each of those points on the study guide, see how many exam questions you can create that test the material at the level of detail that we're going for. For each of those bullet points on the list, you could create anywhere from 2 to 5, 10, maybe even 15 or 20 questions by just rearranging things and asking it in a different way. You could make test questions that address all of the relevant material. I think it'd be an awesome way to study. A way to get started doing that is to use my Blackboard quizzes and the in-class quizzes as a model, or as a mold. And for any of those questions, you can make 5 additional questions by just rearranging how the question is asked, and that could become, I think, quite an effective study strategy. If that's not something that you guys do, it's something that maybe you could try, and I can show you how to do it more this week if you want to. I think probably you could figure it out for the most part, but for a topic like the spinal tracts, what you have is the name of the tract, being able to label or map it out on that spinal cord, identify where it starts and ends and the important structures that it passes through, and the kind of information it carries. Identify it as sensory or motor, and identify it as ascending or descending, and identify the specific type of information it carries. So it's like 4 or 5, kind of points for each tract. 3 spinal tracts and 1 motor tract. 3 sensory tracts and 1 motor tract. So you've got like 20 or 25 or 30 things that you could ask a question about. You might try to make a question for all of those. It might be a good strategy, because at the end of the day, that's what I do when I write these tests. So a couple quick ideas, couple quick points. We're gonna add on a bit of new material tomorrow and Tuesday, and then we'll have Wednesday and Thursday for review. And to wrap everything up, you'll have a long weekend to study before the tests on Monday and Tuesday. I'll get the short answer prompts up here in the next couple days, and we'll go from there. Email me with questions, give me a shout. We're gonna figure it out. Bye.